welcome to Connect to Success with me, Ashley Owens, 12:30 on Thursdays on RVN TV, where we interview the power networkers of the greater Philadelphia and South Jersey area. And I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing Miss Nancy O'Mara Ezold, who is a fantastic partner at her own law firm. And I have had the pleasure of speaking to your lovely son.
Okay.
And all he did was get excited about talking about you. We got on a phone call, and I was blown away by how you have not only crushed the proverbial ceiling, but have had such an experience in your lifetime. So I can go on about you for days. But I thank you, first of all, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm so glad.
Ashley.
I'm very excited. But I would love for people to know who you are, what you do, and a lot of the stories that you kind of told me on the phone. I'd love for people to also hear about those as well.
All right. Well, briefly, I'm an employment law attorney. That means I represent primarily employees who are experiencing problems in the workplace when those problems relate to discrimination. Discrimination based on age, sex, race, religion, ethnic background, pregnancy, disability. We have a lot of state and federal laws that protect people from being discriminated against.
Right.
Our law firm helps to enforce those laws.
Wonderful.
We also do other types of work related to employment. It can be negotiating employment contracts or executive agreements or non-compete agreements, a number of things. But I would say the larger part of our work relates to protecting people against employers who discriminate against them. We also do represent some employers. We represent some small employers, and we work with them to make sure those things don't happen in their workplace, from training their people to doing employment handbooks. So we try to see both sides, but we're there, and we have been now for a quarter of a century representing employees.
Wow. So why was this the kind of law you decided to get into?
Well, that's a really good question, because it kind of goes to the depth of what's going on with me. I'm the founding partner of the Ezold law firm. But what happened is, I graduated from college. I worked for 12 or 13 years for local, state, and federal government. I had a career, but decided I wanted to go to law school. Went to law school, graduated, and after a few years of practice, ended up with a law firm in Philadelphia called Wolf, Block, Shore, and Solis Cohen. So this goes back over 25 years ago. I worked hard, I did well, I was in the litigation department, and I was hired because they said they wanted somebody who wasn't afraid to try cases.
Right.
I wasn't, and I tried cases. When it came time for partnership, however, that firm that had 103 partners, 3 of whom were women, did not make me a partner.
Wow.
But it made my male counterparts partner. So, you know, there's a moment in life when you have to make decisions, and that was an important decision. Do I just walk away from it, or do I do something about it? So long story short, I sued the firm, and I was...
You sued the firm?
I did not. I wasn't the attorney. I was the plaintiff, and I had counsel representing me.
Wait,
and
what year is this, if you don't mind me asking?
This would have been 88, 89, 90.
Wow.
And sued them for employment discrimination based on sex. It was the first case ever brought in the United States against a law firm for sex discrimination in denying partnership. So that's how I got to where I am, because I left the firm, not because I was terminated, but because I refused to stay and switch from the white-collar criminal law I was doing into family law and stay not being a partner. I left, I went with another firm, and the publicity around the case was so great that within a number of short years, I was doing all of my own work. I had clients all over the country.
Wow.
So at that point, I decided to open my own firm, and the rest is history.
Wow. So what happened with the case?
The case was won in federal court in Philadelphia. Before a judge. At that time, there were no juries allowed in discrimination cases. There are today.
Oh, wow.
The law firm took it up on appeal, and it was overturned. So then there were some 60 organizations all over the United States that appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court to hear the case. The Supreme Court decided not to, and that's where it ended.
Wow.
But frankly, most people think I won. There was a lot of publicity about the decision and the judge's reasoning for the decision. And so what's happened is, it's not the way I would recommend someone start a business or try to get clients, but the publicity was such that I think people felt if I was crazy enough to sue for myself, that I could sue for them.
What was it like making that decision to sue them?
In some ways, it wasn't as hard as you might think, because it was the right thing to do, and because I was very fortunate to have a law firm, which I found in New York City, that is an employment law firm, and they said, this is wrong, and we're willing to take on this groundbreaking case.
Wow.
So, you know, once you make a decision, you just go with it.
Right.
And it's hard to look back and say, that was the wrong thing, because it wasn't.
Now, where did you get that drive and motivation and passion from? Like, where do you think that started?
I think it started because I grew up with 3 brothers.
Ah, there it is.
And you've got to fight. You've got to fight for your rights when you're the only girl in the family.
Where are you in the pecking order?
Third.
Third.
Third
Okay.
out of
So
4.
youngest?
But I had a father who absolutely treated me like he treated my brothers.
Yeah.
And I went to schools where, well, when I was in law school, for example, we had a professor who would ask, in contracts class, who would ask the men, if you had a contract to construct a $500 million building and such and such happened, how would you handle it? And they would answer. Then he would turn to a woman in the class and say, if you went into a beauty salon to have your hair cut 1 inch and they cut it 2 inches, would that be a breach of contract? It was infuriating because the women were treated like little girls and the guys were treated like they're going to be attorneys someday. So I took on that responsibility for my female classmates. And so there have been a number of things I've done like that, because you've got to speak up.
And that discrimination, though, especially when you started coming up at school and you came into the workplace, was so much different. And have you seen a change? You work specifically in that lane. That is the lane that you work in. So I can only see that's constantly on your plate all the time.
Every day.
Have you seen any shift at all?
We have. We absolutely have seen a shift. It's been decades since the civil rights and anti-discrimination laws were passed. Right. So corporations are putting more money into HR. They're hiring attorneys to come in and tell them what they should do, and that's what we do for some small companies. So yes, I mean, the public attitudes toward discrimination have clearly changed, and it's a better world than it was 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Right. But it is a long way from what it should be. Women are still earning less than 50 cents on the dollar for what men are earning. And lots of times you hear, well, that figure's really 74 or 75 cents. That may be with respect to any job if you compare a woman to a man. But if you take a woman's entire career, then it's much closer to 50 cents on the dollar. So yes, it's still out there.
What advice do you give your clients that are going through this discrimination? And I'd like to stick with the women aspect of it, because it's such a powerful and it's such a prominent thing that is continuing to happen. And you were at the thick of it during the start of your career. What advice would you give somebody who is currently going through that now?
If they're going through it, then my advice is that unless they're going to leave their job, and I don't recommend it, because the employment discrimination laws were passed to keep women and other discriminated against people in the workplace, not for them to leave. I would recommend to them that they do everything possible to continue doing the good job they're doing, but at some point you have to have the courage to speak up, because if not, it is only going to continue to happen. So is there risk to that? Absolutely, there's risk to that. But that's your choice.
I'm going to throw you a little bit of a not a softball, but a fastball at you. What would you tell women who are compliant enough to recognize the signs of discrimination? Because I can only tell you from experience, in the very beginning of my career, I had 18 jobs after I graduated school.
Wow.
18, and I never got fired. It was mergers and acquisitions and budget cuts.
Okay.
It was working with people that were in higher authority, and then the last position I had, I got talked down $5,000 than my original counterpart. And then, so I never actually knew that was an issue because I was never taught. You just did what you did.
Right.
I grew up in a family where I was Irish Catholic, so you just worked. Like, you worked and you get paid. There was, why stir the pot if you didn't have to?
Join the club.
Right, exactly, right.
Yes.
So I didn't have any idea or the voice to be able to say, like, no, I'm not getting paid enough. You don't ask about money.
Right.
That's just not what you did.
That was prohibited.
Right, exactly. And now that I have my own business, now I'm becoming more and more aware. But if I had, truthfully, stayed working for somebody else, I never would have known that was something that was incorrect. I just thought the way that the world worked. So for somebody like, this is only 3 years ago, so it wasn't very a long time ago.
Right.
So without understanding what my rights were, truthfully, without stirring the pot or feeling like I wasn't that I didn't have enough skill sets. If I had a counterpart that did the same exact job as me but had a different experience,
right,
came in at the same time, why is he getting more than I am when we're doing the exact same job? And so how do I fight that? Like, how do I even recognize that that's happening? So I would love your advice on that, because I'm sure there's women out there that are going through something similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the situations, of course, are all different. But first of all, I think one of the things that happens is you begin to be unhappy.
Yeah.
You begin to resent what's happening. And I think you sit down and say to yourself, okay, why am I resenting this? When I got this job, it sounded like a great job, the money was okay, I love what I'm doing, so why am I now resenting it? Well, maybe I'm resenting it because I saw that when that meeting was held, all the guys I work with were invited to it. When the conference was held, they got to go and I didn't. I mean, I literally spoke with a woman for an hour and could not find any discrimination in what was happening with her until she was about to leave. And she said, well, I have to leave because I got to get to the airport. I'm taking a plane to wherever. I said, for the company? She said, yes. And she said, I'm so sick of this. I said, you don't like to travel? She said, no, I don't mind the travel, but I sit in coach. And the guys that are going have first-class tickets.
Oh, there it is.
It's like, we're going to start all over here.
Yeah.
So that is as blatant as it can be,
Right.
but she just hadn't thought about it. And I think what you need to do is you need to really assess, in all fairness, am I being treated the same way?
Right.
I think you need to reach for that next job. I think you need to reach for that next assignment and establish to yourself that you're perfectly capable of doing it, and bring to your supervisor's attention what you've done and why you're ready for it.
Right.
And if you keep getting no, then it's time to either find another job or go to an attorney and find out whether you are being treated in a way that's illegal.
Right.
That's illegal under the law, because to stay there indefinitely complaining helps nothing.
Yeah. So when we return, we're going to talk more about Nancy's tactical tips and practical takeaways in networking, but I think we're really going to expand more on how to help yourself if you're in this discrimination circle of hell. I'd love to learn more about that, because this conversation, I don't want to stop it. So we'll be right back, so stay tuned.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
be a contender. I want a warm belly to sleep on.
A big house.
How do I look? Do I look good?
I want to play hard.
My nails done once a month.
I want.
I want a home. I just want a home. I want someone to love.
Last year, more than 30,000 companion animals came to us without homes. 20,000 of them were felines. Let's make some homes together.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Iorio. I'm the host of Rainmakers Roundup right here on RVN TV. The show is about looking for people who are in competitive businesses that are doing something different and unique in the world of sales and marketing. Join me right here on Rainmakers Roundup on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. and then again on Thursday evenings at 6:30 p.m. right here on RVN TV.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacqueline. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacqueline.com to book an appointment today.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Connect to Success with me, Ashley Owens. I am here with the lovely Nancy O'Mara Ezold, who is just a powerhouse as an attorney. And we were talking about before about signs of discrimination in the workplace. And I'd like to continue this conversation because I think there are so many women out there, especially now with everything that's going on in the world. It's been, like you said, it's been decades since anything has been
That's
changed. Right. And I would love for someone who is blissfully naive of being in a position where they're doing their job, they're comfortable with what they're making, recognizing the signs of discrimination. So if you could give some examples of what maybe some of your clients have done, because you had talked about beforehand, like she had no idea that the men sitting in first class, that was discrimination. She was sitting in coach.
Right. Which
I wouldn't have thought of.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
You have to, I think you just look at the way you're being treated versus the way your male counterparts are being treated. Don't assume that they are more qualified, that they're more educated, that they have more experience. If they do, then they should be treated as such. Mm-hmm. If they don't, or if you also do, then you should be treated equally. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of signs, and I want to repeat, if you find you're resenting what's going on in the workplace, that's a big sign. There's something going on that you feel is unfair. You just haven't looked at it that way. Right. Performance evaluations. Yeah, there are a lot of companies and employers that don't use them, but there are many that do. They're critical because if you're not being evaluated fairly, then you're on your way to a downhill slide. Mm-hmm. So it's important that you know that that evaluation you're getting reflects what you've done, and if it doesn't, you need to say so. Mm-hmm. For two reasons. One is to hopefully improve your relationship with your supervisor and make it clear, no, I didn't screw up that sale that you're talking about. Do you remember I was out that week and someone else handled it? Mm-hmm. You need to get it straight, and you need to make sure that that evaluation recognizes your accomplishments. Mm-hmm. And so that's helpful to you to have in your arsenal when you want to go and ask for either promotion or an increase in pay. You should know, however, that if they're negative and they're staying negative, then that's in the employer's arsenal to use against you when they decide that they want to terminate you. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. The other thing you can do is, and I don't know that women do this as well as men yet, you need to network inside the workplace. You need to talk with your coworkers, and you need to make yourself available as much as you can to interact with others. If there are outside opportunities to go to a conference or to go out to dinner with a client to talk to them about whatever it is you're working on or selling, then you can't always be the one who says, no, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. You need to understand there's competition there. So that's another way to do it. And certainly if there are any benefits being handed out, benefit could be a work benefit, meaning a new assignment added on top of everything else, but it's going to give you great experience. You need to be willing to do that. Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about all the jobs I've had and how much it's been so wrong. Yeah, does this also, do you have as much, does somebody have enough behind them if they are not a part-time worker, but a 1099?
First of all, if you're a 1099 employee, assuming that that's legal, that you're legally a 1099 employee, it means you're a consultant.
Yeah.
And so,
or a contractor.
Or a contractor. I would use those words interchangeably. And you don't necessarily have any protections in the workplace. So that's, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there are a lot of people who are being treated as contractors because the employer doesn't want to pay all the employee side of taxes, they don't want to do all the bookkeeping, and they really don't fit in that slot. And there are very firm federal guidelines as to who's an employer and who isn't. It's funny you bring it up, because there's a case before the Third Circuit Court of Appeals right now, which is deciding whether Uber drivers are employees or whether they're contractors.
Right.
And that's a multi-billion-dollar question, because if you're an employee, you deserve to be treated like an employee.
What is your opinion on that?
I don't know that I have an opinion, because I don't know all the facts, but I'll give you a few of the facts that you would look at. Is this your only job? Is this, and the courts have begun to look at what's your source of income. So if it's basically either your only job or it provides 90% of your income, you're probably a contractor. Who is it that decides the rules of the workplace, what hours you work, what the wages are going to be, all of that? There are a number of items that you tick off, and if you fall within employee, then you should be treated as an employee, and if not, then you should be treated as a consultant.
I want to go back to you talking about the networking in the workplace. I think it's so interesting that how that kind of there's a deeper meaning behind it, because like you said, the discrimination is coming from women just not asking the right questions. And so when you're networking in the workplace, can you give practical tips on how to do that? So like to your point, asking to go to the client dinner, seeing if you can go to conferences, networking maybe around the water cooler, whatever it may be. Is there anything that you would suggest that takes it a step further? So maybe scheduling a meeting with the C-suite level person and saying, I'd love to get to know, the mission of the company, what makes you tick. Like, what is inappropriate?
Well, you raised a couple of good questions. Yeah. And your comment about asking for a meeting with maybe the CEO, right, or maybe the CFO, or maybe it's 2 levels up from you. Yeah. That is a great idea, as long as you've got a good reason to do it. So if you've been there 3 months and you're 5 levels down from the CEO and you want to talk to the CEO, it's not going to work. But if you've been there a period of time and you're working on something where maybe that CEO has a particular interest, or he or she has already been speaking out about it, you might try to work your magic so that either with your supervisor or maybe with a couple others, you propose a meeting with the CEO. Maybe not just you alone, but you're the mover and shaker with regard to that. And that will get you someplace. If you're in the type of job where you're either in sales or you're, a law firm is a good example, but whatever business you're in, if you have your own source of strength behind you, if you belong to an organization in that field, maybe you're paying for it out of your pocket, the company isn't sending you, but you go and you learn and you contribute, you all of a sudden have a credibility that is just yours. It didn't come from the employer, it didn't come from an earlier employer, and you're beginning to expand your network. And maybe in the next staff meeting, when they say, it would be great if we could do that, but we don't know anybody who has this particular talent. And you say, well, I've been working with someone for the last 2 years from such and such an organization. So I would call it your own individual base of support, independent of your employer.
Yeah, your group of champions.
And it's also good to have it on your resume at the point where you say, I don't think I'm getting ahead here, or I've gotten ahead, but I want to move on. And you take that with you. That's yours.
What do you think has been, out of all of the cases that you have worked on, what do you think has been the most common?
The most common? You mean the most common type of discriminatory treatment?
Correct.
I think it is not the individual employee not being recognized fairly and legally for what they've done and what they're doing, and being pushed aside for somebody else, or being terminated, fired, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that tends to be the pattern when discrimination occurs. You go in, you've got all the requirements, you're doing a great job, you get good evaluations, and you turn around and one morning, I mean, I see this
Happened to me
all
twice.
the time.
Happened to me twice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Someone is coming in. I mean, we have, I don't know how many cases in our files right now where somebody was absolutely doing a good job and ready for a promotion, and somebody was hired above them. Or they created a new job that the client should have, absolutely, it was the next step for them, and no, instead they hire somebody from outside who's 20 years younger and probably male and not female.
What is the driver for these employers to make these decisions? Because if it's a situation where it's happening so much in the course of your career, how do we educate employers in that space to not be jerks and to not have that, not to make those kinds of decisions? Like, because it's clearly not the employee. The employee half the time is trying to build up the courage just to say, no, I'm not, going to be treated like this.
Right.
How do we hit it from Medusa's head? Like, how do you take it from the top and educate and have them recognize their discriminatory actions?
I guess there are a lot of answers, but two that come to mind. First of all, having them recognize the discriminatory actions. There are some people who, I'm sorry, will never. ever recognize it, and if they did, they wouldn't admit it anyway.
Right.
So what we're talking about is for the hopefully the majority of employers, education, having their employees trained, having their supervisors trained, having attorneys available who can answer their questions about, is this, we need to terminate this person, but we're really concerned. We want to make sure that it's a fair termination.
Right.
And let them talk to an attorney. Or if it comes to promotions, are they being treated fairly? There is a lot being written about today about discrimination that is not overt, that people are discriminating because somehow they were brought up that way. Well, they need to learn because the law is way ahead of them, and the law says, no, you can't discriminate. Right. So education, and hopefully they're watching the woman who just walked out the door, or it could be a man who's discriminated against. Maybe it's not as often, of course, but men can be discriminated against on the basis of sex or race or age. And seeing that person go on and do well somewhere else. But that doesn't solve the problem for that person in the workplace.
Right.
It's a long-term proposition. I've been doing it for 25 years, and nothing has resulted in now we're having fewer clients.
Nancy, I could talk to you all day about this, but unfortunately we are now done, and I apologize. Could you do me a favor? Could you look into this camera right here and tell people how they can find you and reach out to you for some help?
Our law firm is in Bala Cynwyd, Pennsylvania. It's the Ezold Law Firm, PC. You can Google us under www.ezoldlaw.com. An attorney speaks with every single person who calls our firm. You're not put off to a secretary or a paralegal. You talk to an attorney because we want to know up front whether there's a chance that you have a claim, or even if you don't have a claim, that you're being treated fairly, and if you're not, that there's some way we can help you with some advice, which we do a lot. So don't continue to be unhappy and resentful if that's happening to you. Feel free to reach out to us or any other employment law firm to find out what you should be doing to be a little bit enlightened from where you are now, because you're going to work the rest of your life.
Thank you so much for being here, Nancy.
Thank you.
It's such an honor to have you here. Thank you, everybody, for watching Connect to Success with me, Ashley Owens, 12:30 on Thursdays during your lunch break on RVN TV. If you'd like to be a guest, please make sure you reach out to ashley@ashleysis.com. I'd love to have you come on and talk about who you are, what you do, what makes you awesome. And stay tuned next week for the next Power Networker. We'll see you later. Have a good day.